Hello, welcome. My name is Shannon Rich, and welcome to an evening with Scott Hendricks. I'm the president and CEO of the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, and we are absolutely thrilled that you could join us tonight. The Oklahoma Hall of Fame for over 94 years has been telling Oklahoma's story through its people and providing educational opportunities to students across this great state. So again, on behalf of the officers and directors and our staff, we're so grateful that you made time to be with us tonight. Tonight's event was the brainstorm of our Second Century Board, the absolute best group of young professionals in our state. And they are dedicated to growing our mission and helping us increase our audience and expand awareness. And we are thankful for all the work they do. And one of the things they are truly dedicated to is making sure that we share inspirational stories with generations of Oklahomans. And so just like we are tonight. Moderating along with me tonight will be Michelle Sopp, who is also our technical guru, our director of development, and with the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. If you have any questions, put those in the Q&A. Those of you that sent yours in early, thank you. But please, we'll try to get the ones that come in tonight in while we respect everyone's time. So now it's my honor to introduce our special guest. And I don't typically like reading, but because there are so many accolades, I want to get them correct. I don't want to skip anything. So born and raised in Clinton, Oklahoma, off to Oklahoma State and Stillwater to college, Scott Hendricks has been called the most successful country music producer of the past 25 years, earning more than 120 top 10 singles, 78 of which peaked at #1. He's received 8 ACM awards, 4 CMAs, and an Emmy. As the current executive vice president of A&R for Warner Music Nashville, Scott has worked alongside Oklahoma Hall of Famer Blake Shelton on multiple music projects and served as Shelton's guest mentor on NBC's The Voice 4 times. Scott's production credits are a list of country music who's who, from somebody who grew up in Yukon, Oklahoma, Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Faith Hill, Trace Atkins, Dan and Shay, Blake Shelton, just there's too many to name. But we're excited because Scott is a part of this year's Oklahoma Hall of Fame class of honorees and will be officially inducted in 16 days, Scott, on November 18th. We're excited about that. Thank you for joining us tonight, Scott. We're so glad you're here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. So I'm a little nervous because I can't see who I'm talking to, but it's interesting.
Well, we're thrilled that you could be here. And before we get going, I told Michelle this story. I've told a few of the staff, but I hope you don't mind that I shared this. But one of the best things about my job is getting to call people and tell them they're going to be inducted in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. Like there doesn't get to be a better gig than that. And I remember getting to talk to you that day, and you were so humble and so kind. And I just read all your accolades, right? ACMs and an Emmy and all the awards, and you were so excited about being given induction into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. And I couldn't tell if that was real or what it meant because, you were just so kind. But then I text you, as I promised, here's the information you're going to be receiving, and we'll start talking. And your text back was, I don't think my heart has stopped since that call. This feels like a dream. Thank you so very much. I never honestly hoped that November would get here more quickly than it does, but a part of me now does. Just getting to work with somebody like you and having that kind of a connection to Oklahoma after all you've received nationally, internationally, that's pretty cool. So I wanted to share that with everyone.
I'm starting to get nervous that when you said 16 days, it's going to be here before you know it.
It will be. We're excited.
We are all counting down the days internally too, making sure we have all the last little things done. So yes, we know the days.
We do.
Well, I'm going to kind of jump on that same train and, kind of elaborate on what Shannon just said. What does being inducted to the Hall of Fame really mean to you? What do you think of this honor and of this organization?
I don't know if it's really hit me yet. I tell people all the time, you know what, they've still got time to change their mind. We've got 16 days for them to change their mind, but it's something I never thought of, or I didn't even know it existed, honestly, for the longest time. And I don't know, I guess it's the ultimate thing I can do in the state of Oklahoma. I mean, I'm in the Oklahoma State University Hall of Fame. That's been 20 something years ago. I'm in the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame. That's been 2015. And now this, but I'm just really humbled. I mean, that's, and honored is the two words I would come up with, because it's something you don't achieve to do. It just somehow happens.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, we're all so excited to have you in this year's class, and we are thrilled to be inducting you in just a couple of weeks. So I'm excited to meet you in person on that day, and say hi to you. So thank you for being part of this class. We're going to talk a little bit about your career real fast. So for those of us that aren't familiar with what a music producer does, can you kind of explain to us what it does and what maybe your day-to-day looks like?
I'll try. A music producer is akin to what a movie director would be. It's a little different in the film world than it is in the music world, in that a movie producer is one who raises the money and kind of hires the director and hires everybody to make it happen and helps make it happen. Whereas the director in the movie is the one that's on the set, is the one that chooses the cinematographer, one that is a very integral part in choosing who the actors are, locations, editing the script, things like that. Well, in the music world, that's what I do. Is when someone asks me to produce a record, I am, and there's different kinds of artists to produce. Blake Shelton is quite different than Dan and Shay, for example, in that Dan and Shay write 99% of their songs. So we get to choose from the pile of songs they've written as to what the script is going to be. Songs are equivalent to the script. And whereas Blake Shelton, I have to find the script. Each time we make a record, I am constantly, daily looking for songs for him to record. Though he's a great writer in his own right, he doesn't have time to write that much. So I rely on the professional songwriters that live mainly here in Nashville to get me the songs. And I'll go through this current album that's out right now. I can't keep track of it, but I can safely say I've heard at least 3,000 demos of songs to get to the 15 or whatever it is that's on this record. And out of the 3,000, it starts like a big funnel, like a filter. Out of the 3,000 plus, I've probably sent Blake 300, and the rest of them I pass on. So it's a lot more work in that regard for an artist like that, where you need to find the songs. Alan Jackson writes his own songs. Brooks and Dunn, they wrote their own songs. Faith Hill, I had to find all those songs. John Michael Montgomery, I found all those songs. And so it's two different ways of doing it. And once we get the songs, we have the script. I determine, based on the songs, based on where we're trying to do, I determine what musicians to hire, which is basically the cast. And there are a lot of great musicians in this town, crazy amount of great musicians. And then I typically choose the engineer, who is akin to the cinematographer. I rely on that person to create the sound. I grew up as an engineer, so that's where I kind of started, as a recording engineer. So I know that position really well. And I still do. Probably a third of the record, I engineer it as well as produce it. And I work with the engineer to figure out what studio, because that's a pretty big factor in how it's all going to come out in the end, is what studio do we want to record in, because all the studios are quite different. So, and I also have to oversee the budget. When the artist hires me, a record company hires me, I have to submit a budget. I've got someone to help me do that. we go over the budget and whittle it however we need to whittle it, submit it, and hopefully they'll approve it. And then we have to figure out how to start recording it.
So I think it's interesting that you related this back to a movie producer, because so we have Greg Fredrickson is in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, who is a movie producer, and he has spoken to our boards before. So that's interesting that you're kind of making that analogy, because some of the people online have probably heard Gray speak and have heard him. He did a fireside chat with us a couple of years ago and kind of talked to that same regard as to what he does versus what the director does. So that was a really great analogy. I have a follow-up question from what you just said. So you said that part of what you do is picking the musicians. When you're working with someone like Blake or Dan and Shay, who obviously been around for a while, do they have a similar batch of musicians they usually gravitate towards, that you gravitate towards for that artist because you know their sound, or do you try to mix it up to get different sounds every time?
Well, I try to mix it up a little bit here and there, and that's a good question, because there are a lot of the same musicians on both of those projects. And
interesting.
The reason is because they're the very best that there is you can hire. They are just on another level, and quite a few of them are the same. The keyboard player is the same. Acoustic guitar players are the same.
I just totally pulled that out of nowhere. That was a great guess.
Yeah, I mean, they are a lot of them the same, and I try to change it up a little bit here and there depending on who the project is. I worked on a new project this summer that no one will know about until 2022 sometime, and that I'm really excited about. And I wanted something different. And so I thought I want this to have the rhythmic feel of Toto. So I just go to Toto's drummer, who's a friend of mine, that said, "Hey, can I talk you into playing on this record?" And he did. And it definitely has the Toto flavoring to it.
Very cool.
A lot of the guys are the same, and every session's quite different. I mean, we approach every session different. And Dan and Shay, we typically take their demos that they've worked on and build a lot from those, whereas Blake, we go in and start from absolute scratch.
I have a question about him, actually. So I follow him on Instagram, and I saw an interview where he was saying, I'm going to quote him exactly. He said, "If it was up to me, I'd probably make an Earl Thomas Conway tribute album." He gave you all the credit for the variety of sound, especially on Body Language, his most recent album, of you really pushing him. How do you do that? How do you get him to go out of his box, or other artists beyond that?
It's funny because, I mean, for him, it's a different, I'm also his A&R person. I'm going to sidetrack for a second. A&R stands for Artist and Repertoire. It's an old term that every record company has an A&R department. And that department is the people who sign artists, I get submitted. You can't imagine how many new artists we hear.
That's where I would send my demo track if I wanted to be signed on, is to you. What's what you're saying?
Yeah, and
totally kidding.
it's a huge pile of new artists and a lot of talented people. But one of the other things that we do in A&R is, once we have an artist, that A&R person works with the producer to help find the material, figure out what is going to be the next single, what's not going to be the next single, what's the sequence, everything about that project. I don't even know where you go to learn A&R, to be honest with you. But anyway, I'm Blake's A&R person. So I'm the one that gets the songs that, for them. We have A&R people for other artists that they're not producers, but they listen to a lot of songs from songwriters. And they will take the songs they think might work for that artist, send them to the artist. The artist will go yay or nay. But for Blake, I've kind of been his A&R and his producer. And there are producers out there who don't really care what songs they record. I came from a background of being a song producer. There's not a lot of those left in this town. There are producers who are crazy talented, but they don't really know songs. You just give them a song, they're going to make whatever they give you into the best they can make it. I am more about the song because to me, it doesn't matter how I produce a record, as long as the song is there. And to me, song is key. And, that's what started when I went to Warner Music. Part of the reason I went there was to quote unquote fix Blake, who I didn't know. And I said, well, what is there to fix? And it's like, well, he has a hit, then he has two misses, then he has a hit, and he has two misses. So I did my homework and studied what he was doing and started finding songs. And I'll never forget the first song I found. It was a stretch for him. And when he heard the demo, I wasn't there to see his reaction, but I can just imagine his reaction because it was a real departure from where he had been as an artist. And it was a song that would show off his vocal and just put him in a place that he hasn't been in. And it was a song called She Wouldn't Be Gone. And that started our run of consecutive #1 singles. I don't know how many we had before we put out one that we knew that wouldn't make it to #1, but he really wanted to put it out. So, I mean, it's a real tricky thing to get him to gravitate towards a song. And for an artist like Blake, who's been around a while, I get pitched songs and I go, we've cut this, we've plowed this ground before. We've talked about this very subject, and there are certain songs that are off limits for him. So I've got to keep that in mind when I listen to him because he doesn't want to say certain things. And so it's tough. And sometimes, he's really busy and, it's hard to get him excited to record. And every now and then I'll send him a song that gets him excited to record. The single that's out right now is one of those songs, Come Back as a Country Boy. I sent that to him and I get a call back immediately. We got to record this song, which is unusual. Same thing happened with God's Country. It's happened several times before.
Interesting. Okay, so that was also one of my questions to ask you, what the difference between production and A&R was. You've already kind of walked that line. So that's interesting because knowing that you kind of dip your feet into both sides, sounds like most people don't.
No.
Okay, so you have a really unique position in that regard. Interesting.
It's two full-time jobs. I mean,
So you stay busy.
Oh yeah. We got a dog with us.
I'm really sorry. That's in my background. I think my daughter just walked through the front door.
Yeah, that's two full-time jobs. Most A&R people in this town, and there's literally 20 of us, maybe 30 at the most in the whole town. They don't produce records. They just simply try to find songs, find new artists, and discover new artists. So I've got to figure out how to allocate my time because doing that is different than actually making the record itself. So it's rare. I didn't set out to do that, but that's kind of just what happened.
Yeah. Well, we're going to shift gears quickly. Shannon, I'm going to let you ask this. This came from your husband's class. So for those of you who don't know, Shannon's husband teaches 6th and 7th graders. And he had asked them if they could ask a question of Scott, what would it be? So Shannon, do you want to jump in?
I do, yes. So for Mr. Kerr's 6th and 7th geography class in Kansas, Oklahoma, small town, much smaller than Clinton, what words of encouragement or what would you tell them to aspire to, or how would you encourage them knowing you're from a small town, you didn't even have the degree that you have from OSU didn't even exist. You just knew what you were passionate about, you knew what you wanted to do. How would you encourage a group that is in a small town that maybe doesn't have all of the people that you have access to? What would you tell them to encourage them?
I think most people, myself included, if you've got a passion for something, follow that passion, even though you don't exactly know how to get there. I mean, every single day of my life, I run into people, what I call wannabes. I want to be a songwriter. I want to be an artist. I want to be a videographer. I want to just people who have dreams of doing something. And so I tell everyone, look, I didn't set out from Clinton, Oklahoma and go, you know what? I want to become in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame because I didn't know it existed. I say this a lot. When I moved to Nashville, I didn't even know that. I didn't know what a record producer was. I didn't know what a number one song was. I didn't. I just knew that I loved music. And I didn't know if I would be good at being a recording engineer, which is where I started. I didn't know if I would be good. I just simply turned the knobs, those big console things. You see, I just turned them until it sounded right to me. And, you know, I think anybody will question themselves all along the way. Am I good enough? Am I good enough to make it? You know, entertainment business is different than some sports worlds, because if you're a golfer, you know how good you got to be to make it. And entertainment world is if you're an actor, if you're a wannabe producer or singer or whatever, you don't really know if you're good enough to make it. And my advice is to literally take it one step at a time. Don't look at the corner office, because that's not where you should be looking. You should be looking straight ahead to your next best move, your next thing you should try to do to get to make an improvement of whatever it is. I say all the time to new artists, they get here and they're, you know, they get signed to a record deal. Then they start looking around and they go, well, so-and-so's passing me on the chart. So-and-so's coming up over here. So-and-so's got this opportunity I don't have. And I tell them, look, if you're a racehorse and you're racing a race, the horse that takes the time to turn around and see who's beside it or behind him has already lost the race. That's too much energy and lack of focus. The ones that look straight ahead, and that's why they put blinders on them, so they look ahead at where they're going and don't worry about what someone else has done, because people will come up around you all the time. And each person has their own path. There isn't one single path to do what you want to do. And hopefully you will make the right decisions when you get to those whys in the road. Which way do I go, left or right? Hopefully you make more right decisions than you make wrong decisions. And everyone is completely different. I mean, some people come to me and say, hey, I'm a singer. Should I try out for The Voice? Or should I come to Nashville and don't go to American Idol, or just try to make it? It's whatever's right for you, whatever you think is right for you, and hope that it works out. I mean, I don't think anybody who's actually had a successful career here had it mapped out where they knew, here's the next step, here's the next step. They got to the point, they got to the next step, and then waited till an opportunity came and chose whatever that opportunity is. And to me, the answer is one step at a time. It doesn't make any difference whether you're from a town of 3,000, 10,000, or a million. It really doesn't. Nobody cares when you get here. It's just you got to make the right decisions about what you do. You don't have to have a degree. You don't. You know, it's funny. The music industry is one of the few industries that, honestly, we don't care much about degrees in college. It's what can you do? It's usually the attitudes that win every time. The people who work and have the greatest attitudes, and they want it more, and they have the passion, and just follow your passion, follow your joy, as I say all the time.
I love that. Follow your joy. I'm going to write that down. I like that.
That's good advice.
Well,
Yeah.
I had a question on my list here. Oh, go ahead. I'm
I want
sorry.
to say one more thing about that because this may be too long of a story, but I'll try to make it short. One time when I was president of Virgin Records, Nashville, I was sitting in my office and one day a cardinal flew into the window beside me and I heard it. It's like 2:00 in the afternoon. I heard it go bang. And I looked out and there the cardinal was laying there fluttering. It finally got up and flew off. I'm not making this up. It actually happened the next day, roughly the same time. I guess it had something to do with reflection. That cardinal once again tried to come through that glass window, knocked himself silly. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. It happened the third day in a row and the cardinal didn't get up. And I was like, okay, God has telling me something. What does this mean? And I thought about it for a long time. And I thought, you know what, that cardinal is like a lot of people who come to Nashville or come to Hollywood or wherever it is, New York, and they want to be what they want to be. And they bang their head constantly into a glass wall. And at some point, you know, all of us have hit those reality walls where you've got to determine, okay, I don't think I'm going to make it through this glass wall. What do I need to do? Refract, change course, whatever you got to do to find your joy so that you can keep on going. Just keep on doing something that, and this town is filled full of people who came here to do A, but are doing B at this point. I mean, at one time I thought I was going to be a great guitar player until I met one that was 100 times better than me. And I went, okay, you go play guitar. I'll go try to mix sound. I've never mixed sound, so I'll try to mix it. And I mean, I walked down the halls of Warner Music and the head of promotion came here to be a singer. It didn't work out for her, but she's the head of radio promotion. A girl I work with in A&R the same way. She came here to be a singer. It didn't work out. So now she's happy doing what she's doing. She found her joy.
Interesting.
Love
That's
it.
so, yeah. Well, kind of related to that, we had a question that was written in. It was very similar to something I was going to ask too, but Travis Whedon, who was on our Second Century board, wrote in, he wants to know how growing up in one of Oklahoma's small towns helped shape your values and therefore impacted your career once you moved to Nashville.
Well, everybody grows up differently. I grew up working on a farm, and so I didn't get to play baseball this summer. I still wonder if I'd be a decent baseball player, but I grew up, you know, getting up early, going to the fields, plowing, combining, whatever we did, chopping cotton, and working very, very long days. And to me, that work ethic has paid off very well for me because for the longest time, like I said, I didn't know if I had talent. Still don't know if I've got talent, but I certainly know how to surround myself with it. And that I've figured out. But I can tell you this, I probably outwork anybody I know.
Obviously, if you have 2 full-time jobs, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
78 #1 hits. I'd say you might be okay at this. It might work out.
Well, I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've been so fortunate, so lucky. Blessed is the word, but I'm, you know, that small town work ethic is something that I don't see as much as I'd like to on the young people coming up. Now, there's a few that got it. There's a few that, so I don't know how they got it. Everybody's different, but they have it. You know,
Yeah.
and there's Dan Smyers of Dan and Shay. I've trained him from the get-go. He's got it. He's the only one I know that outworks me now.
That's what it is. It's just a work ethic. You think that's really what separates people? From the
Well,
rest
I
of them?
think there's a lot of it. I mean, that's just a lot of it. And, you know, I see all kinds of people who come to town to try to be artists, and they you know, they have a little bit of success and it goes to their head and then they don't work as hard. But the people, you know, that like Blake, like Carrie Underwood, Garth, Vince, all of those guys, girls, they worked hard. People don't realize how hard they work. And the ones that, my granddad used to say, the chicken that scratches the hardest finds the most corn. And there's a lot of truth in that.
It's a total Oklahoma saying.
Totally.
Hey, you're from Missouri. Cut it out. You don't.
It's a Midwest saying.
Yeah.
So who do you think has been your mentor, your role model through this process of your career and your life in general?
I've had so many. It hasn't been just one person. I've had a lot of mentors. There was an engineer who will be there at the induction ceremony who allowed me to watch him and learn for 9 months. Obviously, he was a mentor because when he left, they gave me a job there. There's a lot of different people. There was a guy named Jim Ed Norman, who was the president of Warner Music at the time, who gave me a shot and liked what I did. There's been a lot. There was a guy, he's gone now, named Barry Beckett, who is a musical giant. He was part of the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, and I was his recording engineer, even though I was producing at the same time. I was producing several acts, but when I could engineer, I would work for him because he was musically a giant. And I learned so much about how to handle the best musicians on the planet, how to be in a room with them and talk their language and gain their trust. And there's been so many. There's a lot of them. I learn something every day. I'm very curious, and I stay curious.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I guess because, you had so many mentors, you've obviously worked with so many people, I would think just like in any other industry, the music business probably has some people that don't always necessarily see eye to eye. How do you, or have past where they have interacted and they didn't work well together? How, as a producer or as in your A&R role, do you kind of navigate sometimes some tricky paths? Or have you had to?
Oh yeah. Many times. Many times. When I became president of Capitol Records in Nashville, I had to drop 25 artists. I had to say goodbye to 25 of them. That was my call. I had to make the decision. Should we go forward or not go forward? And there was one that I kept, and because I really loved her voice. I just didn't love her album she had made. We didn't know each other. I called her in and just said, I love your voice. I love your artistry. I just think we've got to have a better album. She had recorded the whole album. And I think we're going to get crushed if we come out with this album. And so she left. The next day I get a call from her manager that says, we want off the label. You don't believe in her. I said, no, wrong. I believe in her. I just don't believe in the album. And they said, well, we want off. And I said, well, guess what? You're under contract. I'm not going to let you up because I believe we can get there. And a year goes by. And it's just like this. And I wouldn't let her off. So finally, I guess you can say she capitulated a little bit and said, okay, I'll look for some new songs and we'll cut some new songs. And we found 7 new songs. And I'm shortening this very long story as short as I can, but we put out one of those new songs and it changed everything. It changed everything for Capitol Nashville, changed everything for her. But it was pulling teeth, to say the least. And that was Dina Carter with a song called Strawberry Wine.
Oh yeah.
And that was, there's a lot more to that story than what I can tell here, but we're buds now. We love each other now. But after we sold 5 million albums off that one song, basically.
Yeah, I love that song.
Yeah.
That album had Did I Shave My Legs for This, right?
That was the title of the album.
Yeah.
It's a great album. Yeah. That brings back some
Awesome.
memories. I haven't thought about that song so long. Now I'm gonna have to pull that up tonight.
Yeah, well, and that
Oh,
happens
goodness.
that happens today, even today. I mean, there's a lot of artists that we deal with that we go into. It's time to choose a single, and we have different opinions on what the single should be. The artist has their opinion. The producer may have his opinion. The management may have their opinion. The A&R person may have their opinion, and we have to come to terms with what do we think we should do, because that's a really, really big decision financially and career-wise, because it doesn't take very many misses and you're on the sidelines.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah, I imagine the music industry is not super forgiving. They want results, I would guess, pretty quickly.
So diplomacy is also under that duties otherwise unassigned that we talk about in your A&R and your VP.
Yeah.
You have diplomacy as well.
I get asked all the time, what would I have done differently? And my answer would be, I would have taken a whole lot more psychology. Because that's really the truth. I mean, dealing with artists, and to be an artist, they've got to be cut from a different cloth to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that cloth is tough to deal with. So I mean, I would have taken a lot more psychology. I've learned it just through bumps and bruises along the way. But
So kind of related to what you're talking about, working with these artists and making sure you get people the right songs. What is a favorite song that you have ever produced? Do you have one?
I really don't. I don't. I mean, I don't. There's a lot of them that I have won a lot of awards, and I treat each and every song as though it's the only song, and even the ones that don't make it as singles. My goal is to simply make something that hopefully will stand the test of time, and to know that when I let it go out of my hands, it's a hard thing to do, because I've spent an unbelievable amount of time inside that song, working on every little minute detail of that song. And so my goal is just to make the best record I can make of that song, and hope that the public likes it. But I like each and every one of them for different reasons.
Different reasons. Yep. That's what I was going to guess.
I could easily say, yeah, I like this song because it was a big song. It won Song of the Year, or it was Single of the Year, or some of those things like that. And I don't ever really go back and listen to what I've done in the past. I haven't heard any. I don't really hear them.
Interesting.
I'm too busy listening to the demos.
Well, obviously, if you're going through 3,000 possible songs for artists at a time, yeah, your
It's
plate's
pretty
full.
sad. I'll go into Home Depot or Lowe's or one of those places, and I'll hear something playing through the system, and I go, I know that song. I don't know that. Oh, I think I produced that song.
Yeah, I produced that.
That's how it goes in and out. And
Oh my goodness.
it happens
How
all
funny.
the time.
So one of our staff members, Brenda, you've worked with Brenda. She wanted to know, when you do listen to the radio, what kind of music do you gravitate towards?
I don't listen to the radio.
Really?
I don't have time.
How interesting. So you're only listening to new possible cuts, essentially. Wow.
Even when you're
So you-
driving, you just you're putting in music that somebody has sent you, or you are taking that 40 minutes or wherever you're driving to. Like that's
I have no idea how many songs I get pitched. If I'm on a plane, I'm listening to songs. I'm on a plane a lot. I'm listening to songs. And it used to be when we had CDs, I would literally take a bag of CDs and just play CDs. I'm glad we don't have those bulky
Oh, I
things to
bet.
listen to anymore. But I don't listen. If I listen to radio, probably going to be talk radio, sports radio, or something for a second. But most of the time, I'm listening to either a mix that I'm working on just to hear how it sounds in the car, or silence is my favorite thing to listen to.
interesting.
You get enough music during the day, it sounds like.
I do.
Well, what is the weirdest way or the most unusual way that a song has come together in your career?
Oh boy, there's been a lot of those. I just had one that was pretty wild this summer that came out of the blue. There's a lady named Jessie James Decker. I don't know if you know who she is. She
Yeah.
does, you see her in those commercials for weight loss or something like that. And I mean, I know Jessie, but I don't really know her. I haven't spent much time around her at all. And she wanted me to produce a song this summer. So everybody being separated, they sent me a song, and she goes, "I really like this, but I don't know if it's good enough." And I had to be the one to say, "Well, it needs to be better." And it was an interesting thing because two people who I've never met in Sweden wrote the song, and they recorded a pretty elaborate demo of this song. It sounded like a record, not a demo, but it sounded like a record, more of a pop record. And so they sent it to her, and she hired another guy here in Nashville, a very talented guy, to take her in the studio, take off the voice from the original demo, put her voice on it, and they added some other stuff. And then they sent it to me and said, "Can you fix this?" And I said, "I need to build a foundation under the house. The house that's there is sitting on a really rocky foundation." So I had to go. I took the guy from Sweden stuff, the guy from Nashville stuff, and put it all together, went into the studio and started like I was starting from scratch. And she was in Italy. She wasn't even physically here. And we recorded a foundation, the track, the drums, bass, guitar, keyboards. I can't remember what else, but your basic foundation underneath what all this stuff was. And then I had to go through and go weed out what these other guys did that I just didn't think made it work. And used her vocal, but made it better, fixed her vocal, and just kind of oversaw getting it all put back together. But it was a very wild, crazy amount of work because we did it completely backwards.
Yeah, it sounds like you had to, like they talk about the military, you break them down to build them back up again. So you almost like do that with a song.
That's not normal. Normally we start with the track and then build on top of it. But I had all this stuff, and then we tore it. It was a process. That's the most recent crazy one.
Wow.
And it's out right now called Should Have Known Better. And I still haven't even seen Jessie since it came out. So that's the way it goes these days.
I'm writing that down because I want to look it up so I can listen to it afterwards. We had a question that was written in by Nicole Hopkins, who is also on our Second Century board. She wants to know, what is something you failed at lately, and what did you learn from the experience?
Oh, I failed a bunch of times. Yeah, you fail a lot. I mean, I have to always remind myself the best baseball players on the planet still only hit roughly 3 out of 10. And
good point.
You have to have a better batting average than that to survive in this town. So there have been several times we've picked a single that we were so sure of. We were really confident this single would be the right one, and we put it out and it didn't work. It's the worst feeling in the world. And because you really believed in it and it didn't work. And that's happened many times. And it's surprising. It's sad, it's surprising. And then, it's just the way it is.
So another question that was just written in that's kind of along the same lines is, because you were talking about how often you listen to 3,000 songs, and how quickly are you able to listen to a song and then figure out if it's something you want to possibly send on to an artist, and then what's the time length of what it takes to actually then produce and finish that song? Like, are we talking a week sometimes, a year, or is it just vary so much depending upon the artist?
Well, it varies. I mean, like I said, I sent God's Country to Blake, and 4 days later we were in the studio recording it.
Wow.
That's probably the fastest we've ever turned something around. But there are songs where, you know, I've heard the demo and we didn't cut them for 2 years later.
Wow.
It's hard on a songwriter to continue to hold that song that long, but it can take a while. As far as how much I listen to on the song, I mean, it varies from song to song, but I mean, and when I listen to songs, it's like reading a script for a movie, only much, much shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And you know pretty quickly, is this song saying something differently than it's been said before? I typically don't cast right off and listening to a song because I want to just listen to the song without casting it to Blake, or is this a Dan and Shay song, or is this a Brett Eldridge song? Is this a Morgan Evans song, or whoever else I'm been working with over these years? And just listen to it as a song and go, boy, this is a great song, and or it's not. And if it's one line into the song sometimes, and it's just, there's no way I know any of our artists that would sing it next. So it could be pretty brutal. There's only a few people in my life, my family for one, who's had to endure driving in the car listening to songs with me. So,
see, to me that sounds pretty interesting, but I can imagine that it becomes very routine after a while of listening to so many songs.
well, you know what? The great ones stick out, and that's very true. The great ones stick out.
Yeah,
Ma'am, they do. And so I have to rely on those instincts. And if they, you know, there was a song one time many years ago I listened to, and this is back in cassette days, and I thought, man, I love this song, but I don't know if I want to play it for this artist or not. This was my first time ever producing this particular artist. And I would put it on my dash in my pickup. And a few days later, I'd pull it back out and put it in and go, you know what? I still like this song, but I don't know if he'll do it. I don't want to embarrass myself by playing him the song and him going, is that what you think I am? You think that's you're casting that song for me? And I was like scared. So we went into the record company to have our final A&R meeting before we went to record. And we had picked all the songs on the record. And I still had that cassette sitting there, and I was like, should I play that thing or not? Finally, we were done. And I said, okay, I've got one more song I want to play. But I'll do it if you promise not to laugh at me or criticize me, because I know you may think I've lost my mind by playing you this song, because it is really different than anything you've ever done. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's way more pop than anything we've got on our list. And they said, well, play it. So we played it, and everybody's like, you know what? That's a pretty good song. Maybe we should put that on our list and record it. That was the level of excitement, nothing more than that. So we recorded it. And once we recorded it, I knew immediately this was a big fish on the end of the line. I called the label president. I said, you need to come over here to the studio right now. I want you to hear this song. You're not going to believe this, how we cut it pretty differently. And so we put it out, and that was a song for John Michael Montgomery called I Swear, which became
my
a
goodness.
I love that song.
massive hit. But that just shows to go, sometimes you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you do know. I've got a great story of one where I absolutely knew and would have bet my career on it right then and there too. So it goes both ways.
That's so interesting. So I put together a little playlist of some of the songs you've worked on. A lot of them were number one hits, and that was on my list actually when I was going through and looking up some of your songs. Along with "Sold," which is now this huge TikTok, Instagram sensation right now, also by John Michael Montgomery, which I'm sure you're loving. So because now it's everywhere again. That one came out was that the 90s that came out? I think early 90s.
Yeah,
I want to say
probably, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of talked about working with new songwriters. How has your experience been on The Voice? You know, that's obviously a TV show that's blown up for the last few years. And you, like Shannon mentioned earlier in your intro, you've worked on it 4 times as Blake's advisor. What's the experience like working with, you know, aspiring artists in that setting?
You know, 3 of those 4 times, I had no idea I was going to be on the show. I'm constantly in California recording Blake because that's where he's at. And I mean, so I go out there and we record his vocals wherever he's at, in the closet at one house, in the bedroom at another house, in a little movie theater, another. We were always recording, or we used to. We don't do it as much there anymore, but I still go out there a lot. And 3 of those 4 times, he just came in and said, "Suit up, I need you on The Voice." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I had no clothes or nothing. I went and they dressed me. And so, I mean, there's no preparation to think about. You just go on it. But that was early on in the earlier seasons. But it's really not a lot different than what I do every single day, except that it's different in that they're doing a live band and you're critiquing the arrangement of what can be done. It's kind of like being in the studio for me. It's not, but
yeah. Interesting. I've followed that show since day one. I love still watching that show. So I have actually seen you on some of the episodes, which is funny too.
Now I'm going to go Google what you were wearing. Though I have a different mindset now because I'm going to Google what you were wearing.
You know what? I don't even remember what it is, but I've got a lot of free clothes from that show over the years.
So we have another question that was written in by Morgan on our Second Century board. And she wants to know what your favorite concert venue is in Oklahoma specifically, but I'm going to broaden that to what's your favorite concert venue that you've been to?
Ooh, boy, that's tough. You know what, in Oklahoma, I guess the only one I've been to really a lot, several times, was the Chesapeake Center. Is that what it's called?
It just changed names. Now it's Paycom Center.
Oh, really? The last time we were in there, we were setting up for Blake's tour. It was his day one of his tour that started. He started it there. So we're in there a couple of days before, kind of just going over stuff. And we were in there, and the whole lighting truss, the whole thing that's up above the stage, started rattling, and we were all like, "What's going on?" And it was an earthquake that rattled everything. So I'll never forget that show.
Welcome to Oklahoma, where we also now have tornadoes and earthquakes, in case you didn't get enough earthquakes in California.
Well, there's more in Oklahoma than there are out there. But I don't know if I've got a favorite venue. To me, I don't go to all the live shows. I don't have time to do that many live shows.
Sure.
I mean, the Ryman here is pretty special.
Yeah.
As far as great sounding venues, and if one of my acts that I love or some of my music that I love, when I become a fan again, I love the Ryman.
Well, that leads me perfectly into my last song, and then I have a quick little fun rapid fire session for you to wrap up things. The last question I have is, what do you like to do in your spare time when you aren't listening to all the songs?
I've got more hobbies. I've always had the motto, work hard, play hard. So I work hard and I play just as hard. See that river that's behind you? I live on that river. I don't live downtown on that river. I live kind of around from that river, but you see how beautiful, smooth that water is right there? It's like a lot. So I'm still a water sports enthusiast, wakeboard, wake surf, those kinds of things on the water. hobby.
You need to come here and have you checked out River Sport? It's the whitewater rafting that we have in Oklahoma City now.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
I
That's
like
the
doing
Oklahoma River.
whitewater rafting. We have that in Tennessee. Wow. Look at
Yeah,
That's the Oklahoma River right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you have that handy, Shannon. Yeah, it's an
I think-
Olympic training and Paralympic training spot for water rafting and kayaking and such. So you have to come and visit us. Do that.
Wow. I think I've seen that. My daughter was on the rowing team, and the rowing team
Yeah.
comes in front of our house all the time. But water sports, I ride a lot of side by sides, ATVs, go camping, go hiking, backpacking, stuff like that. Outdoorsy stuff.
Very nice. Okay, well, I know we're about up for our time, so I'm gonna do a quick rapid fire session to end us up real fast with some favorites, okay? What's your favorite season?
It's got to be summer or fall, one of the two, because I love being on the water and I love going camping this time of year. I can't pick summer or fall.
Probably not summer if you're in Oklahoma, but summer's probably a little bit better in Nashville is my guess. Not
I don't care about that. You can always get that.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Mine too. What's your favorite dessert?
Banana pudding.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Oh,
That's
that's
not
good.
common. I like that. What's your favorite drink?
Believe it or not, milk.
Really?
Love milk. I don't know.
You and my dad would get along well. That's what my father would say too.
Awesome.
When do you feel like you're most productive?
You know what? That changes, but it's gotten to be early morning. I will get up sometimes at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, especially if I'm really into a project. I'm brand new and I can't wait to hear what we did yesterday in the studio. I'll get up at crazy hours and come in here right here where I can sit and put these headphones on and focus right here.
Yeah, there's some heavy duty headphones right there. What is something exciting that's happening in your life right now?
Oh, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame is pretty exciting.
That's the right answer. That's the right
Like
answer.
that.
Yeah, I'm going to top that one.
And what would you tell your younger self? If we could give your younger self advice.
I would just say, you know what? Don't forget to have fun. Enjoy every step of the way, even though some of them are painful. Look for the good in every bit of it, and just don't try to get too ahead of yourself. Just take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
So
It's
good.
great advice. Well, Scott, I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. This has been so great chatting with you and hearing all these stories. We've had so many comments in the chat talking about how they're going to look at all these songs differently now whenever they hear them again. So I think your stories have obviously touched some people, and so many memories are from music. So thank you for everything. Thank you for being from Oklahoma and representing our state. And we're so excited to see you in 16 days.
16 days.
16 days. Oh, I'm starting to get nervous.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off tonight?
I could sit here and tell stories for hours upon hours. I've got lots of,
Which I love.
It probably bore most people, but
Well, let's do this. Will you come back after the Hall of Fame? Let's schedule another time and we'll maybe do some more in-depth topics
Sure.
about the industry or about something else, because I think you do provide such a visible, aspirational goal for people to see. Like you said, I love what you said earlier, which is none of us set out to be, I didn't set out to open a museum. Like, you can't always build your career that way, but stay open and work hard. And I love that. And I think it's good for everybody to kind of be reminded about that. That's what the chat also says, is that's just good advice to be reminded on our journey.
Yeah.
well,
Absolutely.
life is a journey. Might as well make it fun.
I like it.
I agree.
That's a bumper sticker.
If you do something you love, you're going to be fine.
Yep.
Agreed.
Agreed.
We look forward to
Awesome.
seeing you and your wife in a few weeks, and not even a couple, like
Mhm.
Boy,
days, TikTok.
I'll be here soon. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your night. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.